Hello and welcome to the review of the day, which, as the thumbnail has doubtless told you, is for Changeling by Roger Zelazny. I was very keen for this book and I enjoyed it thoroughly. So Roger Zelazny essentially is an author. I could probably buy his old shopping lists and read them with great enjoyment. I don't think he's ever put a foot wrong with all of his books that he's read, that I've read. Some of them I read too young and needed to come back to, but his books are ones that I can read over and over again. Changeling, however, is one that if I had ever read before, it was a long time ago and I didn't remember it. It took me a while to get my hands on it. I had Mad Wand, which is the number 2 in this series, and I had it on my to-read shelf for a while. I was holding out for Changeling so that I could read it first. So here is Changeling. According to the cover, it's the first mass market edition. This book was published in 1980 for the first time, and this is a 1981 edition, I believe. I could be wrong about that. That's not the sort of thing I know an awful lot about. So it's ace fantasy. You've got this rather 80s cover, shall we say. It tells the author who's proficient in SFF what's in it, kind of, but it's funny and it's pretty naff, really. It's like that green fur shawl on the one guy. I think that's meant to be the antagonist. It's just funny, and the portrayal of our main character in the with the arm tattoos, that's equally entertaining. Still, it's not a bad edition. It's got the wraparound art, which I enjoy. The blue theme is nice. But wait, there's more. Any Australians remember that? On the inside you get, hello, please not the head. Please let's go for the shoulder at least. Shoulder bird? Destruction bird. Yes, so as I was saying, not only do we get the cover art, the inside, as was common for a lot of the Zelazny books, has got some beautiful black and white illustrations. These illustrations are by Esteban Maroto. I also love the fact that you get told who the artist was, because in a lot of those early books they didn't do that. So again, very sort of sword and sorcery fantasy type artwork. And that makes this little book larger than it otherwise would be. 272 pages, of which a lot of it is artwork that is always stark and are very enjoyable and almost entirely relates to the book and the story that you're holding. There's a couple of exceptions. And why are we chewing the zipper? Don't chew the zipper. And this is one of them. So yes, it's beautiful. I love so many elements to this art, including the absent space that is the chair in front of the girl, who is wearing very, very little. The only female that could possibly be referring to is Nora. Nora is a village girl who is described as wearing a blue tunic. I'm quite sure that most villagers wouldn't be romping around in jewel tit straps and have their ass hanging out of their whatever that is, but it's very Boris Valgero style. It would certainly have appealed to the majority of readers, and honestly, it appeals to me. I think the female form is artistic, and I overall like what the artist has done. Please, no head. We've had the head discussion. I know I lost, but no head. Okay. So that was lengthened rather by the bird. Sorry about that. Okay. So the artwork is great. I loved the book. You go straight into it, and straight away you've got this scenario and this thing that Zelazny does so often, where it makes you question your allegiances. You start off with the sorcerer standing on the top of his castle, which is being attacked by combined malign forces. He's attempting to defend. He's watching his beasts, which are dragons and orcs and other things. I think definitely dragons. Not sure about the orcs. Maybe orcs. Being destroyed. And then he sees someone he calls Old Moore come out, and he knows he's another sorcerer, and he knows he's pretty much defeated. But he doesn't give up. He does what he can, and he goes down for a last-ditch fight, which he is pretty sure is going to be his end, and it is. So you've got a lot of sympathy for him. But then, and his surname is Detson. I can't remember what his first one is. But then Zelazny turns it all around, and it seems that all of these forces that were arraying against him was because he was doing blood magic and black magic, and he was disturbing the force and balance of the world. So they were taking him down because they felt they had to. While this is going on, you've got this other story. You've got a thief character, very D&D type thief character called Mouseglove. And he's come to the castle to steal something, but he was caught and he's been in the dungeons. When the fighting started, he managed to get out of the dungeons, and now he's looking for escape. He encounters the sorcerer's wife, who's carrying a bundle, which she manages to save when the tower she's in is destroyed. We later find that's a baby, because the forces that have invaded the castle, they've won. Then they find this baby. It's the son and obviously inheritor of the evil sorcerer who has just been defeated. What do they do with it? Its name is Paul Detson, and all of the Detson family are identified by this dragon-shaped tattoo, like birthmark on their forearm. So there's no way of really disguising it. It's mooted to send him to a far country, but the person in charge of the forces says no, sooner or later a merchant or something will come by and they'll know the story, and he'll just be angrier. He's always going to come back on us. We have to kill him. The sergeant really doesn't want to. And the sorcerer, Old Moore, comes up with another solution. He offers to take him into another dimension, but he says the balance of living creatures has to be addressed. I'll have to bring back a baby. And the sergeant in question says that he'll take them. So this is how Paul Detson grows up in what is essentially our world. He's got a different name, and he's got a father who's very much into building things, and I think computer systems he builds. Whereas the boy is more of a dreamer. He's doing a literature degree when this story substantially starts, which his father doesn't approve of, and he's playing guitar in, I guess, bars at night. And it's notorious that when he's playing guitar, his dragon birthmark throbs, and that strange and magical things happen around him. Meanwhile, the boy, who comes to be known as Mark Marrickson being the sergeant who's taken him in, goes back to the other world and grows up there. He doesn't fit in at all. He is essentially, much like his biological father, a creator, a tinkerer. He makes devices. He makes a water wheel when he's very young. And this is where we learn about the difference between these two worlds. We learn about it most here. The other world is very much magic-based, and while it has in the past had technology, the technology was seen to be a malign thing, which caused battles and problems and is loathed by the peasantry. Whereas magicians and magic and sorcery systems, they're seen as established and they're accepted. In our world, well, it is what it is. It's heavily technological. So Mark Marrickson is over there, and he keeps trying to do things like make mechanical horses or water wheels, and he keeps being mistreated by the villagers for that because they're scared of devices, and he doesn't understand. His only close friends, of course, are his father and mother, who love and support him, and one girl who's, I think, a little bit younger than him, called Nora in the village, who tries to shield him and tries to warn him when he makes these things. She goes, it's okay to show me, but don't show other people. And Mark Marrickson is a bit obtuse in that way, and he always does. So then we reach the point where Mark Marrickson makes a really big device, is chased out of the village, and goes feral to one of the old technological towns where he starts trying to recreate technology. This is when Nora goes to Old Moore and says, you've got to find a solution to this. He's doing bad things. And by then he was doing bad things. He'd gone all Master of the Universe and was planning to take over and force the villagers to be his slaves if they wouldn't listen to what he said. So that's the plot as it stands when Old Moore comes back to our world and retrieves the boy who'd grown up over there. He comes back to this world, finds his father's old deserted castle, and falls into magic as if he'd never been away from it. Having done so, he names himself after his father, which is Paul Detson, or takes back the name that his father had given him, which is Paul Detson. So this is your classical good brother, bad brother, light versus dark scenario. But what Zelazny does here very well is he doesn't make a bad guy and he doesn't make a good guy. He makes two guys who are in circumstances where things are happening around them. At one time, Paul Detson, who realizes who Mark Marrickson is, says, hang on, I'm being squeaked out. Come on, chirp. So he figures out that Mark Marrickson is actually the son of the people he grew up calling mother and father. And he goes to meet him. He tries to talk him down from his stance of world domination. It doesn't work. By then, Mark is kind of insane. And even though he's given pictures of his real parents, he doesn't want to go back to our Earth to find out what it's like there. He just wants to continue with his world domination, which he sees Paul Detson as being a problem about. Also, he's jealous over Nora. Nora's by now is moving around with Detson, and Mark thinks of her as his. So, even so, while Mark is clearly the bad guy or the antagonist, he's still portrayed in many ways as being a real person, and I like that about Zelazny. So there's one point where Paul Detson ruminates that he's very much like the person he grew up thinking of his father back in this Earth was like. He always creating invention, but not very good at estimating what other people are going to think about them. And of course, the way Mark is portrayed is if he had been born in this world, he'd be an innovator, he'd be an inventor, and he's got all the hallmarks of someone who would be a really, really good executive. I think I remember reading somewhere that all the psychologists at assessments that apply to a psychopath apply to a successful executive who's just decided to make money instead of kill people. That's an oversimplification. Maybe I'll reread that book one day. Okay, so another thing that's really interesting about this book, I think, is the journey to power theme, which is what we get for Paul Detson. He comes back to this world, his dragon tingles, he can see energy and work spells. And because this is an 80s book, that and a library is all that it really takes to start him on his journey. Oh, again with the zipper. Everyone wants to chew the zipper. More modern fantasies would have a whole heap of apprenticeships and a whole heap of schools and a whole heap of stuff. But this is an 80s fantasy, and basically he learns to do magic by learning to do magic. And he isn't victimized, he isn't bullied, he has a reasonable life, and he's a very balanced human being. I love Zelazny's balanced human being. So that modern sorcery development into power versus the old school sorcery development into power, I really enjoyed that. So what else can I really say about it? I finished it, I adored it. Ah, yes, let's talk about Nora. So this book would not be particularly well suited. There's that feminist index that I can never remember the name of. It sounds like bechamel, but it's not. Bechdel, something like that. And in order to qualify, oh, look at this one. That is just stunning. That'd make the tattoo of the century, I think. So in order to qualify for this, you have to have two women in the book who are talking with each other, and they're not talking about a man, or a man isn't present, or something like that. And you definitely don't have anything like that. So for someone who's looking for that, not suited. On the other hand, Nora, who does not walk around with her tits and ass hanging out, is a very strong and likable character. She's well balanced. She isn't over inclined to fall in love with the first male. She's got her own mind and she's intent on finding it. For the 80s, she's a really strong character. She's not a primary character. Our primary character is Paul Detson. But as a secondary character, she does an excellent job. She pulls out a knife and slashes someone. She's a smart, with it type of girl, and that's proved by the end of this. She doesn't have to fall in love with or marry either of the guys. She just goes off to be her own person among her people. So that's the artist representation of Nora, and I really liked her as a character. Not a feminist scale, but I think she works as a feminist friendly female in a fantasy science fiction. I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was good. Okay, the main character's got that same self-resilience. So that's a very similar main character, I would say, to the main character Randy in Roadmarks or Corwin in the Amber series, in that he's going through a journey to know more about himself and find his background and come into his power. And a lot of Zelazny's primary antagonists are similar in the fact that they're self-contained. They have a lot happening, which you find out bit by bit. They don't info dump themselves on you, and they can be almost diffident characters, but they've all got a fairly strong idea of what they want and how to go about it. So, yes, Roger Zelazny, Changeling, thoroughly recommend for people who love this genre. I do recommend one with the artwork if you can get it. I assume there's some without it. I love the fact that Zelazny had so many with illustrations in an era when it just wasn't common to have them. It's getting more common now, and I like that. I don't know anything about Esteban Maroto except that he illustrated this, and his illustrations are good. Thoroughly recommend it. I am going straight on to the number 2 in the series, Mad Wand. I have picked it up so many times over the last few months and really wanted to get into it. Finally, I'm going to let myself do it. Shouldn't take me long to get through that one either, and there'll be another review for that coming. Thank you for watching and all that sort of things. If you've never read a Roger Zelazny, I thoroughly recommend Roger Zelazny. So many Roger Zelaznys. Choose a more modern one to start with, perhaps, unless you really like the old SFF. Thanks for watching.